I'm Niven. I am an email developer at Mayoris, a Swiss digital marketing agency or company. And I help build modern, dynamic, and interactive emails using our email. I'll build a platform, Mailix. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words because I made a last-minute change to my slides right before I joined this, so I'm all over the place. I'm scrambled. Right, I guess I'll go straight into sharing my slides. Alrighty. So today I want to talk about paths to success, the steps you can take to become a better problem solver, get better at debugging, just overall things that can help with career success. So this could be for any level really, but especially for newbies to the industry, not just the community, junior developers, mid-weight developers as well. You might be doing really well, but maybe you're realizing now that you're not as great at debugging, you're having to ask for help a lot. And that's fine. I still ask for help. As you'll see here, I've just over 8 years of experience in email development. I still get stuck. I need a fresh pair of eyes from time to time. I need to reach out to the community or to friends I've made in the community just to have them look over it. But that's fine. Hopefully we'll have steps that can help lessen that impact of getting stuck and having to reach out. So just a little about me before I go right into the content. If you're wondering about my accent, I'm originally from New Zealand. I now live in Scotland, where I've been for 5 years. And as I mentioned before, I work for Mayoris, who are based in Switzerland, so I'm working remotely. And yeah, so just over 8 years of experience in email development. That's in-house, agency, freelancing, full-time. It's kind of all over the place. I've got a lot of experience. I've built templates for companies all over the world. So you pick up a lot of tips, a lot of tricks, a lot of hacks. And yeah, I guess it's just you'll pick the stuff up over time. Sometimes it's good to have mentors as well that'll give you ideas. But hopefully this helps with that. And then previous to being in email development, and I guess throughout my career, I've kind of jumped between email development, front-end development. And yeah, I've got just over 10 years of experience with HTML and CSS development specifically. That's my passion really. So email is a perfect fit for that, even though it's I guess slightly, well, it's very behind in terms of that comparison point. But anyway, it's still fun. I find it really fun. And so what are we going to cover today? First chapter is stay sharp. So always keeping on top of or keeping an eye on. Hello?
Hello? It's me over here. I can't see your slides, unfortunately.
Oh. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Here we go. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so we'll go back to the beginning.
Nice.
There
Perfect. Looks good.
That's my little intro screen. This is what I was talking about. So originally from New Zealand, now living in Scotland, and working remotely for a Swiss company. Okay, now what we're going to cover, stay sharp. Just keeping an eye on front-end advancements with HTML and CSS. Obviously, we can't always do what they can do, but some of that stuff can inspire us to build incredible solutions. So we'll cover that in a sec. Chapter 2, fundamentals. So it's knowing different build methods and knowing the best practices that are a blanket of all of the different build methods. Doesn't matter which one you use, you should have certain aspects of the industry best practices in your build methods. Chapter 3, testing. Client testing can get quite expensive depending on what tool you use, but I have free alternatives for that. We'll have a look at that. Chapter 4, debugging, just learning how to problem solve, building up that skill set. Chapter 5, knowing how to effectively seek help. So what can you do before you reach out to someone and with your files, etc. And chapter 6, build, write, and share is something I'm really doing at the moment. I started last year, just building stuff for fun or trying out techniques and then sharing my findings from doing those tests. And that just helps everyone learn and teach the next wave of developers. Cool. So stay sharp. Don't sleep on front-end HTML and CSS advancements. It's incredibly important that we keep an eye on what they do. I mean, you've seen Action Rocket build in, I think it was the grid technique and for building front-end layouts. They use that in their emails. It doesn't work everywhere, but they've had fallbacks for that. And that's really important to try those things out. And when they work, use them and share your findings with them. So I've got a couple of examples of what I mean. One of them is interactive email with checkboxes and radio inputs. So it's really simple. This is probably one of the most basic implementations you can use. This is something that we use in front end all the time for forms. But you have JavaScript on the front end to constantly check and watch what's happening in terms of the user experience, what they're doing, what they're clicking on, what they're interacting with. And you can adapt as they're using the website. So you can show different cards, different images, and just change things dynamically. In email, we can't do that. We don't have that technology. So we have to trick it. We have to mimic it. We have to fake it, essentially. So we use radio inputs and checkboxes. So this is a really simple toggle, which you see everywhere. And all we're doing is we've got a label or a trigger point around this CSS created toggle. And around it, that trigger point is linked to this radio input. So with radio inputs, you can only have one selected at a time. Checkboxes, you would have multiple, but in this case, you only need one. So you have the trigger point here linked to this one. The one that is linked to this one is hidden at the moment because it's already enabled, so you don't need it. So if we click this, what then happens is that input is enabled. The trigger point that was linked to that is now hidden, and the one that was linked to this one is now showing. And so you could click that and it would click tap or trigger it with whatever assistive technology you're using. It would then disable and back and forth. Another brilliant technique, which I've become a huge fan of and I've written an article about, is the faux absolute positioning technique. So on the front end, you can easily layer elements and you don't have to worry about dark mode issues. You can easily adapt those because you don't have the same restrictions. And you can use Z-index to layer things really easily and have them change Z-index if you need and animate things and things like that. With email, that's not as easy, but a few people in the community came up with this really ingenious idea to essentially trick the rendering engine or trick the elements to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. So in this case, this background tile is stacked above these two elements here in the normal order. And all we're doing is we're saying, hey, this has no height, the wrapper of this tile has no height, and this content simply gets tricked into moving on up to fill that space. But that tile still has its height and still appears where it should be. And so you're essentially tricking it. And this is essentially what we're doing here. If you're really interested in this technique, there's the initial implementations by Stephen Seo, Mark Robbins, who have articles on this. And then I also did a really good breakdown with this exact build, actually, with Megan Bushhausen for her Notes from the Dev podcast for Email and Acid. We go through it in detail, but we go through even more detail in my blog, on the Malix blog, with how it's built, the actual code, what issues I encountered, and the fixes I put in place. So again, you can use elements or techniques that they use on the front end and just use problem-solving skills to adapt your thinking and coming up with different ways to use email code or email restrictions to mimic the same functionality. Learn the fundamentals. I personally believe that every developer should at least have one really good, one build method that they have a really good grounding in, and then one other that they have at least a basic understanding of. So in the industry, we have a bunch of different build methods. Most of them are adaptations on Fluid Hybrid, if we're ignoring tables right now. So there's like Spongy and things like that. The Fab4 technique made by Remy just before me is similar to the Fluid Hybrid, but it builds on top of that and is kind of the really super geeky method. Like in terms of how I came up, I started with tables. Fluid Hybrid wasn't a thing yet, I think for another year or two. And I have a really good grounding in this. I still use it from time to time, but at Malix we use Fluid Hybrid. And I jump in between these now because I have a really good understanding of both. But what I believe is have a good grounding in one where you're essentially not an expert, but you feel like an expert. You could build anything. But what happens if you go to an interview and you don't have any information of how they build emails? So you don't know what techniques they use. But what happens if you go to the interview and they say, hey, we build our emails with fluid hybrid technique or method. How are you with that? So I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say, I may or may not be aware of it, but I haven't used it before. Depending on that company, they could either, one, have the time and the resource to train you up, which a lot of companies will do, which is great, because you have a good ground in one method. It's only a slight adaptation to learn the next one. Or they could be short on staff, they could be short on time, they just need someone quickly. Your application gets pushed aside and goes to someone else that has the experience. So it's good to have, even having experience in Fab 4 and not fluid hybrid, you could easily adapt that thinking to work because they are quite similar. Right, so best practices. I'm going to quickly go through these. Accessibility is a major, you have to. So even just as simple as semantic tags and not baking text into images. Semantic tags are like your heading tags for headings, P tags for text, and so on. You've got alternative text for images, non-decorative images. You're just trying to make it as easy as possible for everybody to access your content. You don't want all image emails because that's just going to waste people's time. It's going to essentially gatekeep content from them, which isn't great. That's not great for anybody. 2023, all emails should be responsive. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the use case is. You don't know how anyone is going to open your email. It should be mobile responsive, or just responsive because you've got tablets and whatnot. Your higher DPI displays. I mean, it's kind of an accessibility issue as well. You've got people with vision impairment. They are going to zoom in on their screens, or maybe it's a company-wide setting or something. That is going to wreak havoc on emails and Outlook. So you want to fix that. There are plenty of articles about that. So it's easy to fix. Dark mode. That's a very tricky element in the industry, and Remy just went through that with you. You don't try and get around it if you don't have any real reason to. So there are instances where it makes sense, or a client is paying a lot of money and you have to do it. We've had to do that recently at Mayoris. It just happens. But if you can, from the design step or stage of your campaign, you should be thinking about how your design can adapt or be auto-optimized for dark mode. Then you can add your fixes to make it look a bit better. Okay. And I mean, there are a bunch more steps and best practices and things you can add to your emails to make them better. Email and Acid and Litmus have articles about those. Just Google best practices for email development. You'll find plenty. I mean, I think Campaign Monitor have some from a while back. You'll find plenty of information. Right, chapter 3, email client testing. So for years, we've had these really great tools, Email and Acid and Litmus. They do cost a lot because they are essentially enterprise solutions, I guess, for large companies. And they work amazingly well. I've used both at different companies. But it's not really great for entry-level developers, junior developers, freelancers as well at times. So in the last few years, we've had a few mid-range solutions come up, which is really great. But there is also the free alternative. It's very manual, it's very laborious, but it works. If you can't afford something, I couldn't afford any of those tools. I still can't really. I have my company Litmus account that I can use for work stuff and experimenting with stuff during work hours. But in terms of this is really easy. It's just sign up for a Gmail account, Yahoo, Outlook.com, Apple Mail, whatever else. Then you want to set up the webmail, desktop programs, mobile apps, and then sign all of those in. Set up edge case scenarios as well, non-Gmail accounts in Gmail. They will have different results depending on the device, which is nuts, but it happens. And there's all sorts of things you can do to get around paying for it. It's very manual, and it's annoying, but there are alternatives. And then, like if you encounter an issue, your flag is raised that an issue is appearing in a tool that you have to pay for, or pay for access to. So it's T online, you have to have a product to get access to the mail account or mail client. Same with Orange as well in France. Reach out to the community. Ask if anyone can help you test. You'll actually find that a lot of people are happy to help. Just it's as simple as them getting your HTML, sending it to their test account. Boom, they'll send you the results or give you a screenshot or whatever. So there are alternatives. In terms of sending those tests, obviously there's Parcel. You could build your email in Parcel and then send the tests from there. And yeah, it's great. There's PostDrop as well. It's another alternative. I haven't used it. I don't necessarily think you could, I don't know if you can build in it, but you can definitely drop your email HTML in there and send it off to whatever addresses you need to. Same with the Puts Mail tool from Litmus. Same thing. That's more of a drop your code in, send it off to whatever accounts you need to. Right. Chapter 4, debugging. So learning to debug, it's very much a skill. It's very much, it's problem solving in terms of debugging is super important for any dev. I guess it's difficult. Like if you have a mentor that can show you all of this, which I didn't have personally, I've kind of got that now with my manager, who's amazingly amazingly talented with code, but sometimes you don't have that. So I'm hoping some of these steps will help. So what I see a lot in the Email Geeks Slack channel or Stack Overflow or the Litmus community, the forum, sorry, is kind of a lack of a process to eliminate basic issues. So knowing what to start with first before you seek help. And like this point isn't to discourage asking for help, because as I said, I ask for help. Like I've seen every single dev that I look up to ask for help from the community. It just happens. Sometimes you need a fresh pair of eyes. But there are steps you can take to help make it easier for those people that are going to help you to debug and fix your issue. So the first step is check your code formatting. This can be a quick skim. Don't go too detailed with this. It can be really time consuming to do it that way. But let's check out HTML tags. Inline CSS properties are closed with semicolons correctly. CSS blocks and style blocks in the head or in the body are closed or formatted correctly. Some builder tools, I know Litmus does this really well. They will highlight that there's an error somewhere, or highlight the actual error in pink, bright pink. It stands out easy, and that is really helpful. So if you can find a tool that does that, or you have one and you have to enable it or something, I don't know, but that is really helpful. Removing HTML and CSS sections one by one is one of the most helpful ways of debugging. So say you have a section that's broken, I will start one by one, removing sections above and or below, one at a time, testing, seeing what happens. Because what happens a lot is you'll see, oh, there's an issue in this section, it must be in that code. But what could actually happen is you could have an unclosed tag above it somewhere in a different section, and that's causing or wreaking havoc further down. So if you start deleting those sections, you could see that deleting a certain section is going to fix your issue. Really easy. Again, really easy step that could save you hours of debugging. And I mean, same for CSS. Start removing CSS from your head and just see what happens. If it continues to be broken, then you know it's not that. And then exporting code from your email client, so the tests that you send. So some ESPs, the email client sending services, will some will format code on send, which sucks, but it happens because they're trying to make sure that your email code works, but it actually breaks it sometimes. And then on the receiving end, a lot of email clients will also format your HTML to work in their rendering engine, which will be unique to them. They don't know what other email clients do, so they're doing what works for them best. So a really notorious client for that is Outlook for Windows. It'll format code, it'll add its own Microsoft Office code to it to make it work, but that isn't always helpful. So if you can export the code, not all email clients will allow this, but if you can, that'll probably show you issues as well. And finally, seek help, chapter 5. Research, trial and error, and calling for help. So it's right before you ask for help, do you need to search to see if there's any help out there? Like there's tons of articles out there now. The community is very old and it's huge. So there's a lot of people talking about email code, trying things out, sharing it with the community. So have a look. And then once you find a few solutions, trial and error, test them out. Do they work? Do they don't? Fine, move on to the next one. And then after you've done all of that, now it's time to ask for help. So how do we do that? So this is a recommendation. Not everyone does this. Maybe everyone doesn't expect this, but I think this is the perfect example of asking for help. So preparing your code. So it could have personalization or it could have confidential information in terms of the sending company. So what you want to do is strip that, but replace it with dummy content that basically equals the same length of text or the same size images. So we, as the people helping you, are getting as close to real representation of what you're trying to fix as possible. And then we can see exactly what's happening, and then we can find issues for you. Visual aids are super important. Screenshots of what it should look like, what's happening here, here, and here. Maybe add some arrows if it's not really obvious to us. Visual aids are hugely helpful in this case, because without that, all we're going to do is take your code and have to stuff it into an editor or a testing tool and then wait for the issue to arise. And it might not arise. It might not arise until we have to send it to a test client. So yeah, visual aids are really important. Writing a summary of the issue. Detail exactly what you've tried, what you're trying to do, what worked and maybe slightly helped, what didn't help. Like all of that information, any information you can give us is super helpful. It just means we have less work to do to get to the root of the problem, which helps you, because what you don't want to do is ask a question, not prepare any of this stuff, and then you have to wait for someone to come back and say, can you provide some code, please? And time zone clashes could mean you're waiting, that person is waiting another 12 hours to get an answer. They're going to sleep. And so you're waiting another 24 hours to get any kind of help. So all the information you can give us, the better. And kind of gone through all of this, but it just makes the process smoother. It makes it easier for us, makes it easier for you and quicker for you to get your answer. And then also if it's in the Email Geek Slack group, that is all documented. It's there. People can search and find that help. Even if you post it somewhere or a blog or on Stack Overflow's a question and someone sees it and answers it, that's always there. It's always going to be there as a historic record of what you encountered and people's answers and solutions. And that just works and helps everyone in the future. That's perfect. That's what we want. Just a really good cyclical environment and ecosystem. Right, and finally, chapter 6, build, document, and share. So the point is learn new things, get an understanding of it and how else you could use it, and share with the community. Just put as much information out there as you can. So keeping up to date with the latest industry advancements, as we mentioned at the beginning, with staying sharp. It's really going to help hone your problem-solving abilities if you're learning new things and adapting your thinking to come up with innovative solutions to mimic the same functionality as the front end. And at the same time, that proposes new ideas to the community, which is really important, because we can't just do the same thing for years and years and years, because it gets boring for everyone, really, and we limit what is possible in email as well. And then the act of reading something or watching a video tutorial, doing it yourself with a test tool or mimicking what's in the tutorial, is really going to solidify that learning. And especially writing it down and trying to think how you can explain the issue and the fix in as plain as in English as possible, or whatever language, sorry. That's just going to solidify that learning and the problem solving that you went through, and it's just going to imprint on your brain. So it's just going to come out of nowhere and remind you, like the photo salute technique. I had to do that for a client project. And then just the act of writing up that, it's quite a long blog, but it's really detailed. Doing that, it's now just imprinted on my brain. So I can just pull it up whenever I need it. I'm testing stuff out all the time with it to try and expand on it. And that's what I hope you can do as well. And as mentioned at the bottom, that's the email developer's circle of life, is learning, understanding, sharing, and then the next person can do the same thing and expand on that. And this is really important. You have to be open to constructive negative feedback. Hopefully you don't get actual negative, mean people, but it does happen. So yeah, you have to be open to negative feedback. It has to be constructive. Hopefully those people are on board with that, because you want people to tell you when you've forgotten a test case, you've not thought about this scenario, something like that. And that's perfect, because you're going to go, okay, I didn't know that. Now I know that for the next time. I'm going to update this one, or I'm going to leave it for now and remember that for the next time. So yeah, this is the learning process for everybody, yourself plus the people you're going to teach. And that feedback really reinforces everything that you've just gone through. Like, yeah, you may have missed a couple of things, but that's fine. Like that's going to be easy to absorb after you've absorbed this whole new technique or this whole fix and solution. And then, yeah, accept it, learn from it, do it all again. Try another technique out. This is the really easy way to learn quickly, hone your problem-solving skills. Yeah, just build for fun. And that's basically, and I get onto some of the stuff I do for my day job and just in my free time as well. I'm starting to write a lot for the Mailix blog, so there's that for absolute positioning technique on there. I'm working on an accessibility write-up for our blog as well. And there's a few other interactive email examples on there too. And then on Bare Bones, I kind of that's where I experiment. That's where I try new things out and just have a bit of fun and then just share with people and see what they think. Yeah, so you can reach me there. Thank you for watching us. I did waffle, I did stumble, I did say a lot of R's and M's, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. This is my first conference, but yeah, thank you for listening. You can reach me on my website. You can find all my social links there, LinkedIn, Twitter. You can find me the Email Geeks Slack channel as well. I'll try and stick around and answer questions if there's time. Well, there's some time, and I'll be around anyway in the chat as well. So thank you.
Niven, this was phenomenal. Honestly, like I learned a lot, which is great because I feel like I'm just starting my actual email dev journey. So thank you so much. Everyone in the comments is saying the same. Phenomenal. Megan's clapping in her office, so that's really great. We love active participation. So yeah, thank you so much again. If anyone has any questions, drop them in the chat or the questions tab. And Niven, yeah, if you can pop in there and take a look if there's anything remaining. But honestly, for a first presentation, I feel like I'm shocked.
I wasn't nervous for this, and then right as I stood at my laptop ready to get invited in, the sweats came on. I'm feeling really hot. I think Remy, with 1 hour's notice, was better prepared than I was for this. So that's speaking volumes for him. He's amazing. His session was amazing.
I couldn't do a live coding challenge. You could not pay me. It just wouldn't work for me. This comment from Paul says, this is something I would share with anyone new to an email team or trying to develop and be part of the required onboarding.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, thank you so much.